control the vertical.
Welcome to Anthologic, the TV anthology podcast. I am your host, Mark. Anthologic is a podcast dedicated to exploring the good, the bad, and the odd of horror, science fiction, and the best of mystery suspense anthology shows and series on TV. Join me as we slip through the cracks of reality to approach the extremes of experience, where we can peruse the stories and art of a sinister fairground of strange and wonderful rides. And now we go on to the show that is the focus of this particular episode. Welcome to this episode of Anthologic. We are host Mark. Today we're covering a series called Ghost Story, though it also went by the name Circle of Fear. I'll explain in a few moments. This came out in 1972. The episode we're going to talk about tonight was the pilot one, and it did get commissioned and went on to have one series. The pilot came out in March the 17th, 1972, and it's called The New House. Season 1 that was then commissioned, and the first episode started to it. Well, the series started to air on September the 15th, 1972, and went through until, well, it kind of changed format all the way through, but the entire run, which was 22 episodes, finished on March the 30th, 1973. Now, apparently it was suffering from low ratings, and they decided to retool it somewhat and give it a new name, to present it as a new show almost. And so after episode 13, they renamed it Circle of Fear, and I believe they put new intro and sort of new framing devices around it. And it went on for another, 9 episodes after that. Wasn't recommissioned. It just didn't get the ratings. It was compared in many ways to Night Gallery, and it does indeed look like a long segment of the Night Gallery. It just looks like that. But, you know, the episode I watched, the pilot, it was a good one. It was good. It ran for about 40 odd minutes. It's on YouTube. You can catch it. And it's got a strong pedigree. It was directed by John Llewellyn Moxey and written by Richard Matheson. This is the creative pair who brought us The Night Stalker and The Night Strangler, particularly The Night Stalker. And in many ways, it looks quite a lot. The film stock and the shooting style looks very much like that film. And it definitely has its moments. I have to say, there's quite strong moments throughout this. The story is about a married couple who buy a house, and the woman keeps hearing things and wanting the husband to go check it. And he's kind of got quite a lot of important work to do in the morning, but he's a lawyer, I believe. But he's fairly patient with his wife, and he goes and checks. It turns out she's pregnant, and the housekeeper does mention, pregnancy plays funny tricks on your mind and all this, that, and the other. Well acted. I quite like the actors in this. I don't recognise them much from anything else, but apparently Barbara Parkins, who played the lady, was the maid of honour at the wedding of Roman Polanski, Sharon Tate. So that kind of gives you an idea of the era. Quite interesting. And I have to say, the rest of the season looks kind of interesting. Some of the scripts are written by Jimmy Sangster. Apparently, Jimmy Sangster was like creative control. Jimmy Sangster's a British scriptwriter. Did a lot of work for Hammer. He did some of their better films, and some of them not so good films. But he was an interesting character. And some of the directors range from Paul Stanley, who went on to do The Island of Dr. Moreau, the famous sort of catastrophe film, but quite well directed. Richard Donner directed one. Richard Donner went on to do the Superman films. The second one onwards, I think. And he also was famous for doing the segments in the Banana Splits called Danger Island. That was kind of his big break. So this would have been a few years after that. And I'm trying to see if there's any. And one of the episodes was written by Robert Bloch, who wrote Psycho. Jimmy Sangster, I already mentioned, did a few. And there is one treatment by DC Fontana and Harlan Ellison. DC Fontana, writer of the original Star Trek series. Some great episodes of the original Star Trek series. So, interesting pedigree there. However, the series did not succeed in the ratings and was not recommissioned or got cancelled one way or another. But surprisingly, there's also a vinyl LP with some, I think, segments from episodes that can be bought. Sony released it. That 2012, it looks like. Kind of interesting. Yeah, not a bad show at all. It did definitely remind me very strongly of Night Gallery. It had an interesting framing device. It was presented in like a plush hotel from the early 70s by a man who was kind of Orson Welles-like. I think they were going for an Orson Welles vibe. He was fairly big. He had a beard. He had a cigar. And the actor's name was Sebastian Cabot, who was who was presenting this series. So he kind of opened it up and closed it up in a fairly avuncular way, not in a sinister way. So interesting. Apparently Barbara Perkins was also in the Valley of the Dolls movie, so there's that too. It's kind of reminds me of other things. It made me think somewhat of there's an episode from the Nigel Neal series from 1976 called Beasts, where there was an episode called Baby. That is much more dark and sinister than this, but it's kind of a woman is being troubled by a spirit, and there are a few moments that make you sort of sit up in your seat, let's put it that way. So it's worth a look, and as I say, it's on YouTube. So yeah, Ghost Story. And the pilot episode is called A New House. It sometimes gets don't get confused with the first episode of the series. That's called The Dead We Leave Behind, which apparently is also very, very good. Stars Jason Robards and Stella Stevens. I would nearly watch that, but then I came across the fact there was this pilot, and I felt like, to do it justice, we should at least do the pilot. I may continue watching this series at some point in the future. I quite enjoyed this. I believe most of them are on YouTube as well, so it's possible to watch. There was a box set, but I don't think it's in print anymore. But you never know, it might be on one of the streaming services too. Not sure. Anyway, that about winds it up for this episode. But before I go, may I ask, is anybody out there?
I'm not.
We now return control of your television set to you until next week at this same time, when the control voice will take you to